So today I'm doing a video for the writers out there, and I thought I would talk about my main writing inspiration. This has mainly come about because recently I've been really struggling with my writing, and reading people who inspire me has really been helping with that because it's been reminding me of why I started writing in the first place. And I think also people who we take our inspiration from have such a big impact on who we are as writers. And I mean, I know people always argue about the point of being individual and not taking direct inspiration from other people, but I think ultimately as a writer you are a amalgamation of everything you read, so everything you read has some impact on what you're writing, be it something that you don't enjoy that you take the lesson of what not to do, or be it writing that really inspires you and that makes you want to write that well and have that passion in your writing. And obviously you're not going to just take ideas straight out of other people's books, but you definitely get some sense of where your writing's going to go through the people you read. And there have definitely been some authors over the years who I definitely turn to in times of creative need and the desire to get some inspiration. So I'm going to talk you through a few of the authors and the books in particular that have really helped me on my writing journey. So I'll start with the first and only man on this list. To be fair, this is a rarity because I normally do take my writing inspiration from really strong female figures, obviously because I'm a female writer, and I think if I was a male I'd probably take it more from men, but it's definitely female writers that they get my creative juices flowing the most. But there is one man or one book in particular that has been an exception to that rule. If Nobody Speaks of Remarkable Things by John McGregor. Now I'm sure people who have been here for a while are fed up of hearing me talk about this book, but this is a phenomenal book, and I think it really helped my creativity because this is kind of the standard that I would like to get to for myself. So this is a really uniquely done book. Probably the most literary thing that I had read at the time, and it very much plays with language and plays with the rules of language, so there's not necessarily punctuation where you would expect it to be, or speech marks or anything like that, but I think it works really, really well. And I think, as I say, this is kind of the must-do book for me. Like, if I could write a book this good, I'd feel really good about myself. And yeah, the creativity I think that is used in the language was just really inspiring to me because it kind of opens your eyes to the fact that you don't have to follow the rules to be good. So this is definitely a big inspiration for me. Then moving on to the women, we've got Amy Bender with The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake. Now I don't love every Amy Bender book that I have read, but this one really stood out for me. I have since reread it and it didn't quite have the same impact, but I think the trouble with loving a book is that when you reread it, obviously it's not going to be like experiencing it for the first time. The main reason I find Amy Bender, especially this book, quite inspiring, it was my first experience with magical realism that really inspired me. I've read a few magical realism-y novels before, but I hadn't enjoyed them, but this one took magical realism to a level that I really enjoyed, which is kind of a whole different level from just fantastical things happening, but it's quite literally just a magical realist manifestation in a normal world. So this is about a girl who can taste people's emotions through the food that they cook, and it's about how it affects her life and how she deals with it. And as I say, it was the first magical realism novel that A, did magical realism in a way that I enjoyed, and B, did it in a whole novel. I had read a few magical realism stories before that I had enjoyed, but this was definitely the first magical realist novel that really stood out for me, and it had a major influence on the way my writing, especially of my short stories, went. I think there's definitely Amy Bender motivation behind a lot of my themes. Also, Amy Bender as an author has really helped my writing. I went through a stage where I enjoyed watching videos of talks she had given and talks about her own writing process, and one thing she says is that she only ever writes for 2 hours a day, and she normally tries to get that done in the morning because as a writer there's a lot of guilt to always be writing, and I think every writer experiences that feeling. But where she was giving herself that 2 hours, she would then spend the rest of the day doing the other things that she needed to do and not feeling bad because she knew she had done her writing for the day. And also, it was just a good cut-off point for her because when you're writing for hours on end, it can get a bit much. Your head gets foggy and you can't quite concentrate on what you're creating. So the process behind her writing really helped me, and it is what got me through a lot of stories, is that 2 hour process, or I normally now do an hour, which is quite a shame. But it definitely helps to give yourself that set chunk of time and then allow yourself all the other time to do other things. Otherwise, you either feel bad because you're not writing and put everything else to the side, or you don't get any writing done because you're kind of torn between this place of wanting to do other things but also knowing you need to write, so you end up doing nothing. So I think it is so helpful to set aside that chunk of time in the day, and that advice really, really helped me. Then I've got someone who's become a really big influence for me at the moment, and I've been going through a completely dry patch with my creation. I've been just completely struggling with making anything new, and someone who has kind of got me out of that slump and reminded me why I write in the first place is Carson McCullers. Now, I read The Heart is a Lonely Hunter a few years ago and I absolutely adored it, and I've recently read The Member of the Wedding, which also had an essay in it by Ali Smith about Carson McCullers' writing and about her life and just her general practices. And it really helped me because it reminded me, and I mean Carson McCullers' writing in itself reminded me, that you should write what you want to read. You should write about your experiences in the most honest way that you can, of your experiences of humanity or even of life, and just put all your heart into it. I think that is what really appeals to me in writing, is the heart behind it and the sort of unspoken feeling that we all share but that we all struggle to put into words. And I think Carson McCullers does that really, really excellently, and I just find her so inspiring, and she's definitely reminded me. I think somewhere along the way I kind of started writing too much with publication in mind, maybe, I don't know, but I stopped enjoying the process and it became very much a job for me and a bit of a chore. And I think what I've gathered from reading The Member of the Wedding is that I need to remember that I'm ultimately writing because I enjoy doing it, and it doesn't matter if anything comes of it, and actually writing not intending to get anything from it is going to create better writing, which is therefore going to go further. So there's those ones. And then we're on to the big two, who are probably, if somebody asked me what kind of writer I would like to be, I would say these two, one in particular, but I'll talk first about Ali Smith. Now I've got Autumn, The Accidental, and There But For the Here. The Accidental is definitely my favourite, so we'll talk about this one. Again, I think this was interesting because it was one of those books that I read that did different things with language and didn't necessarily use punctuation and didn't necessarily use your standard format, and I really enjoyed that. But also, I just enjoy Ali Smith's writing in general. I think much like Carson McCullers, she gets to the heart of an issue, and I think what I find interesting as a writer about Ali Smith is that you can very much see her process in her books. She often starts with one sort of mitigating factor, and there's a saying in writing that when you're writing a story you should put a man up a tree and throw rocks at him, and Ali Smith really does that. She puts a cat among the pigeons, as it were, and she very much looks at how the pigeons around react to this addition of the cat, and it's so interesting, and I really enjoy the fact that I can see that in a lot of her work, sort of the starting point and how her working process went, and obviously she does it amazingly, so you know there's something to be learnt in there for sure. And then if I'm honest, my main inspiration is Jeanette Winterson. So I've got The Passion, The World and Other Places, Gut Symmetries, and Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit here. Now again, what I love about Jeanette Winterson is the heart behind her work. You can just see the effortless love that goes into her writing and how much she enjoys the language that she uses, and it comes across so beautifully. And what I also love about Jeanette Winterson is the underlying theme of love in all of her stories. Somehow or other, love always is in there, but it's not the cheesy kind of stereotypical love. It's sort of the nitty-gritty difficult parts of love, but also the ultimate beauty of it that she really gets across wonderfully. One thing I would say of the stories of hers that I've read is that her plots aren't necessarily the strongest, but it kind of doesn't matter because the writing is so phenomenal. In The Passion, for example, the plot kind of didn't grip me. In fact, I can't even overly remember what the plot was about, but what I really enjoyed was the way the characters interacted and the deep feelings that the characters were trying to deal with and the way she worded them. Just for an example, I'll read you a bit at the end that really I keep coming back to anytime I need a bit of writing inspiration. I say I'm in love with her. What does that mean? It means I review my future and my past in the light of this feeling. It is though I wrote in a foreign language that I am suddenly able to read. Wordlessly she explains me to myself. Like genius, she is ignorant of what she does. I mean, just how you could come up with a paragraph like that completely astounds me. There's something really effortless about her writing, and I think that's a sign of good writing, is if it's completely effortless. And actually you could say this certainly about Jeanette Winterson and Carson McCullers, and also Ali Smith to a certain extent, is that it's completely effortless. It almost seems as though they've had to put absolutely no effort into the work that they've done and just created something beautiful. And I mean, you could say that about people who I haven't included on this list. So John Steinbeck would be one who he just looks like he has no struggle, and obviously they do have a struggle. I mean, Carson McCullers took 5 years to write The Member of the Wedding because she couldn't get it right, and she couldn't work out what she wanted the sort of turning point in the novel to be, or the main focus. She knew she had these characters, but she didn't know what was driving them. To read them, it just seems as though there's no hard work and sweat and blood that's gone into it. Sometimes you can kind of very much see that a author has tried to craft the novel into something beautiful, whereas with these authors, and F. Scott Fitzgerald is another one actually, it just looks like they've had to put the bare minimal of effort in, whether that's the truth or not. And I would really like to get to that stage with my writing. So yeah, every time I'm feeling hard done by and like I'm struggling with my own creative process, I return to authors like these, and they really remind me of how far you can go with your writing and how much you can achieve if you enjoy it, because I think that's something all of them have in common, is that there's just a pure enjoyment in the process of writing, and it really comes across well. Let me know down below what your main writing inspirations are, or if there are authors that really inspire you to be the best writer you can be, and I'll see you next time. Bye!